Pause. Welcome to your math lesson for today. Before we get started, you will need your math resource binder, your 5A textbook, your 5A workbook, and paper and a pencil. So go ahead and pause and go get these things and then come on back. In our last lesson, fifth graders, we were working on the distributive property, and so our warm-up is going to be similar. So remember, when we're working on these warm-up problems, I'm not asking you to find the value. I'm asking you to apply the distributive property for this one, and then we'll say unapply the distributive property for this one. So pause, and then come on back and see how you did. So remember, for this first one, we're applying the distributive property. So we need to have that 5 go to both of these other parts, okay? So our problem should be coming out like this. So remember, our 5 goes to both, and then 3 and 2. And yes, we want it in this order. And today we're going to be jumping into subtraction. And so this is really part of why the order matters, because the order matters for subtraction. And then for this one, we're pulling out what's been distributed. So looking here, what number appears twice? The number 6. So we would say 6 times 4 plus 8 and have those parentheses. How do we do? Hopefully it's coming back to you. So fifth graders, for our objective for today, we're going to be doing more work with the distributive property. As I already hinted, we're going to be doing some subtraction with the distributive property. And actually, we're going to kind of build on what we've already done. So what we're going to go ahead and do as we're talking about subtraction, we need to remember that with the distributive property with subtraction, and really with any subtraction, we need to remember that order matters, okay? So we talk about the commutative property of addition, and that's because for addition, you can add in any order, right? 4 plus 5 equals 5 plus 4. Okay, so for addition, order is not as important. But with subtraction, 5 minus 4 is not the same thing as 4 minus 5. Okay, so for subtraction, order matters. So as we're working on our distributive property examples with subtraction today, we need to remember that the order matters. Okay, the same kind of principle will apply, but we just need to really remember that part, that order matters. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start working together. I will be loosely working on out of page 32 in your textbook. Okay, but we'll build on it as we go, and I'll be writing problems for you to see here as well. So just to refresh our memories, for the distributive property, we're distributing this 5 to both parts, right? So we've done 5 times 3 plus 5 times 6, okay? So when we talk about the distributive property with subtraction, we're really going to be following the same process. We just have to make extra sure that when we do this, that we're keeping the correct order, okay? So what does that mean? We'd say this is equal to 12 times 7 minus 12 times 3. So we bring that subtraction symbol down and we see the 7 and the 3 stay in the same order. Okay, and again, that's because with subtraction, order matters. So hopefully you've been practicing like I've asked you to up to this point by even with your addition keeping the order so that it's not too much of a tricky habit for you. So let's just see what would happen if we were to carry this out. So let's say 3 times 2 minus 1. So let's just solve this using order of operations. Okay, 2 minus 1 is 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Now, what if we used the distributive property to solve this problem? So we're going to distribute that 3 to each. So 3 times 2 minus 3 times 1. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. 6 minus 3 is 3. So we can see that both methods get us the same answer. And I know I've been saying this, and it's still true, that eventually we're going to do some problems where the distributive property will actually be easier than the order of operations procedure. But for now, I can see that we're just learning the process up to this point, okay? So let's just rewrite a couple of these problems to practice this with subtraction. So go ahead and pause and rewrite this problem using the distributive property. Hopefully you had 2 times 7 minus 2 times 2. Let's try another. Go ahead and pause and rewrite this using the distributive property. Hopefully you had 15 times 6 minus 15 times 2. What if we went the other way? What if we undistributed? So we have, let's say, 6 times 3 minus 2 times 6. I'm kind of trying to trip you up, but remember, the method should be the same. So we look at these two and figure out, what number do we see twice? We see that number 6 twice. So now the sixes have been used, and it might even be useful to cross them out so that when you're filling in these parts, it's less confusing. So now we have a 3 here and a 2 here. Let's try another. Go ahead and pause and try this one, and then come on back and see how you did. So hopefully, 5th graders, you compared these two and saw, I see 1 8, 2 8s. So that's what's been distributed. Now we fill in a 14 and a 2. Let's try one more before we move on to our next skill. Go ahead and pause and try, and then come on back. 5th graders, you should have observed that there were 2 11s. And then we fill in our 16 minus 2. So 5th graders, again, the process is the same with subtraction, but we just need to remember that that order matters. We really have to make sure we get that order in place. Okay, so we're going to take a look now at page 32 in your textbooks. So if you want to open up to page 32 in your 5A textbook, you can work along with me. And we're going to start with 10A. 10A. So this is really all going to be about applying the distributive property or unapplying the distributive property. So the order here is slightly different than what we've done before, but it should pretty much be the same thing. All right, so we need to see, we see our 20 has been used here. Our 5 has been used here. So what do we need to fill in if we're trying to use the distributive property? That means we should be filling in a 3 and a 3 here. Let's try another one. So again, we're being given a problem where the distributive, or a half of a problem where the distributive property has not been used, but now we need to figure out what to fill in. So as we're looking at the distributive property, as we look at this problem, that shouldn't be there, no parentheses. This is the number that should be distributed. So we should see this number twice. Do we? Yeah, we do. So we don't need to worry about this part over here. So it's this part that we need to fill in. Remembering, of course, that order matters. So 50 comes first, and then 7. You can keep on working along with me, 5th graders, and eventually I think it'll start to click. So again, if we look at this half of the problem, which of these numbers is going to be distributed? 7 should be distributed, which means we should see 7 twice. Do we? We do. 1, 2, which tells us we can move on from this and start filling in these two in the right order. So 4 goes here, 3 goes here. Let's try another. All right, looking at this half of the problem, which digit needs to be distributed? That's right, 3, which means we need to see 3 twice, which we do. That's great. So we're done with 3. So now we look at filling in 12 and 2. They gave us 12, so we actually don't need to fill that in. So all we need to fill in is our 2. I'm going to fold this paper over and then we'll keep on going. We just did D. Let's take a look at E. So E is going the opposite direction. So we see a case where it is not, or where it has already been distributed, and we need to see what would happen if we undistributed it. So remember, the number we see twice is the one that's going to be outside of our parentheses. So 3 and 3 is there. We have our 4 in place. So now we need to fill in our 5. Similarly, for F, we're going the opposite direction. So we're seeing that's a multiplication sign. What number is being distributed? It's this 10. So we see it twice and it's already been pulled out, plus our 72. Excuse me. And so we fill in our 28. All right, I'm going to try and give you guys a little bit of a challenge. Let's see. What if I said, what if I said this? This is slightly different than what we've been doing, but we still want to ask ourselves, what number should be distributed? Yeah, that's right. It should be the 4. And remember, we've been talking about if a number is being distributed, we should see it twice on the other side of the equation. So as I look over here, I ask, do I see 4 twice? And I don't, which means I have my 4 here, but what goes here? I need to put a 4 there because we need to see that 4 twice. Now we have it twice, so we're done with that. So now we fill in our 3, and our 7 is already there. Let's try another one like that. I made that a little bit easier than I was trying to, but that's okay. So which number is being distributed? This 8, which means we need to see this 8 twice. Do we see it twice over here? No, which means we need another 8. Once we have our 2 8s, we are done. We already have our 12. We already have our 5. So now we're done. I'm going to have you guys try one on your own and see how it goes. So 5th graders, go ahead and pause and see how we do on this one if you try it on your own. So we keep asking ourselves, what number is being distributed? The number being distributed is 7. Do we see 7 twice over here? No, we don't. We have 1, so we need to have another. Now our 7 is done. Next, we want to fill in our 13. And our 6 is already there. So we're done with that. Okay, 5th graders. We're going to go to the bottom of page 32, which is a little bit trickier. Some of it's kind of like what we were just doing. Some of it's a little bit trickier, but we're going to give it a go. Okay, starting with 11a. So we have 20 plus 4 times 3 equals 20 times 3 plus what times 3? We can follow the same process that we have been. What is being distributed? It's our 3, which means we need to see it twice. We see it once, we see it twice, so we're done with the 3 for now. Now we want to fill in this part. We see our 20 in both spots, so what goes here? That's right, our 4. Okay, we're going to try this one. And again, it's a little bit trickier, 5th graders, but we can do it. All right. So this one, they've made us really have to think kind of hard about this. But here's what we're going to focus on. If we see this 20 and this 4, if we were to put these together, they would equal 24. So another way of writing this would be 20 plus 4 times 3. So they've taken this 24 and broken it out into 20 and 4. So now when we think about the distributive property, this should be more like what we've been looking at already, right? So what number is being distributed as we look here? It should be our 3. Do we see 2 3s? No, actually, we see 0 3s. So what needs to go in both of these places? That's right, you need to have a 3 in both of these places. Okay, C is similar to the one we just did, a little bit trickier. So let's just walk through it together. So as we look at this side, we see one of these numbers twice. What number do we see twice? 8, which means when we think about our distributive property, the 8 should be outside of the parentheses, okay? We're also given, so for these 2 slots, we know what is going to be in this part here. It tells us that it's 6. So as we're looking up at our 36, they've broken it out into one part. So we have to figure out what is the other part. In other words, blank plus 6 is 36. That's right, it's 30. So we fill in our 30. Again, these ones are trickier, 5th graders. So we're kind of taking it a step at a time. All right, D should be more familiar based on practice problems that we've already done. So looking at the left-hand side of this equation, what number should be distributed? Our 4 is going to be distributed, which means we need to see our 4 twice on this side. Do we see it twice? Nope, we don't, which means we need to fill it in 2 spots. Okay. All right. Again, this is kind of a combination of both of the tricky things we've done. But as we're looking, I want you to see if you're noticing any of these connections, because ultimately what we kind of want to think of over here is blank minus blank times blank. That's how we're going to undistribute, okay? So I see a 69 here, and a 70 and a 1. Are those related? They are, because 70 minus 1 gets us our 69. So what has to go here then? 4. And we know that that 4 is what's not, when we look at this part of it, that's what's being distributed. When something is distributed, we need to see it twice on this side. Do we see it twice? We don't see it at all. So we need to fill in 2 4s. All right, fifth graders, F is a lot like the one we just did. 99 times 8 equals 100 times 8 minus blank times 8. I want you to pause and see if you can figure this out. And then come on back and see how you did. So if we were to undistribute this, fifth graders, we see that there's 2 8s. So we would say 8 times 100 minus something. But looking over here, there's our 8 and 99. 100 minus what is going to get us 99? Hopefully you guys saw that it would be 1. How'd we do? These ones are kind of challenging as we're starting to apply the distributive property a little bit more, but how'd we do? Hopefully okay. So fifth graders, for homework, you are going to be working on page 24 in your workbook. Okay, page 24. It's going to be filling in blanks, much like we were just doing together. I want you guys to do the best that you can. I'm actually not going to give practice work today. Again, I want you guys just to work on the workbook carefully, slowly, and then also make sure that if you're having questions, send me a message to set up a time to chat. Visit Mr. Tom Have's office hours so that we can work through some of these. They are a little bit trickier, some of them, but give it a shot. Ask questions and let us see how you did. Good luck, fifth graders.